Hi, this is Deboki, and today for Not My Thesis, I'm going to be talking about some recent popular science things that I've been reading. I have time now to read about science things that are not my own, and I'm really excited for that. And a while ago, I tried to start this series called STEM Syllabus, where I would, create lists of recent, basically recent science reads, kind of like what this video is. And I made only one video in that series. It was about sexual harassment in STEM. I made that video kind of pre, Me Too becoming a really big thing. So if you want to see kind of what the conversations in media were looking like before Me Too became such a huge part of our conversation kind of overall, I would check that video out. I think there's a lot of really great links. I obviously chose them because I really like them, and I hope that as sexual harassment becomes more commonly discussed, hopefully the people who have been doing that reporting will see their work kind of pay off in people's lives. But like I said, I didn't make any more videos in that series. Part of it was just time. Also, part of it was I just decided I didn't like the name. STEM syllabus just sounded kind of homeworky, and I just figured, why not kind of fold all of that into this series? That's what I'm going to start doing. I want to start highlighting some more popular science articles and podcasts and videos, just anything that I think is covering really interesting topics and is done really well and that I think other people would find interesting. So when I do these recent science reads kind of videos, I'm going to try to keep it to about 5 recommendations at a time. I will link to all of the articles that I talk about below. And I don't think that I'm going to make these lists themed the way that the sexual harassment one was. They're probably just going to be more like a hodgepodge of articles, but I'm hoping to cover a bunch of different topics and fields. So in the future, if there's a topic that you're particularly interested in, let me know and I will try to keep an eye out for that and see kind of what interesting things I find. So today, all of my recent reads / recommendations are going to be articles. And the first article I'm going to talk about is The Geeks Who Put a Stop to Pennsylvania's Partisan Gerrymandering. This was published in Wired on February 28th, 2018, and it was written by Issy Lepowski. Gerrymandering has been a huge topic in US politics recently. It's basically the way that districts in each state are drawn up to sort of bias the way that our government is structured, potentially bias it towards certain parties. And it's an issue that a lot of people are taking to court to stop because it's actually reducing people's ability to get representation at the state level, at the country level. So in this article, Lepowski is documenting basically this big trial that happened in Pennsylvania, where expert witnesses were brought in to testify to prove that gerrymandering was happening in Pennsylvania, and also that it was actually being used to effectively silence Democratic voters in the state. There's a lot of things that I love about this article. I think, for one, it reflects kind of this fundamental challenge that I think a lot of us as scientists think about, which is how do we explain what we're obsessed with. We really understand these technical nitty-gritty details. How do we explain that to a group of people who may not have as much of that obsession or that training? How do we explain it in a way that's meaningful and understandable and try to affect some kind of change? And that's not about dumbing down science, that's about being able to effectively communicate it. And in this article, there are actually 3 different expert witnesses that they talk to, and each of the witnesses are using different techniques to actually prove gerrymandering or to prove that it had an effect, which I thought was really, really cool because I think what it shows is that, you can approach the same problem in different ways, and no one technique is better than another. There's one person who's just looking at a map and he's like, yep, you can see on the map that this district makes no sense. There's another guy who's using this really interesting analogy to how we recommend restaurants to prove this whole math thing. There's a number of different techniques that are being used, and they don't compete with each other, they support each other, and they actually kind of build on each other to reach a bigger conclusion. And I just thought that was really well laid out in the article. I think you should read this article if you're looking for some kind of good political news in the US and you want to learn a little bit about how you can use math to make it happen. The next article is The Cells That Eat, Regurgitate, and Eat Your Tattoos Again. And this was published by the New York Times in March 6th, 2018, and it was written by Steph Yin. This article is about the basic question of how do tattoos stay in your body. Like the article says, I think a lot of us probably have the same idea of how tattoos work. I know I did when I started looking at this article, which is it just seems there's ink that goes into your skin and it probably just stays there, right? You probably think about something very static. At least that's definitely what I thought of it. And what this article is about is some research that's being done that shows that it's actually a very, very dynamic process. It actually involves things like kind of constantly happening in your body, and it's kind of fascinating. Basically, they are these cells that will eat up the ink, and then, like the title of the article says, regurgitate it, and then more cells will come in and eat it up again. I don't want to like give it all away. There's some cool experiments that they're describing in the article. I think it's like slightly on the technical side. And just as a warning, if you are sensitive to the idea of doing experiments on animals, you might not want to read this article because it does describe them. It's not like gruesome or anything, but if that's just something you're sensitive to, just watch out for that. But I just think that the research that was done was really interesting. And to me, what was really exciting is that this whole process involves my personal favorite system in the body, the immune system. The immune system is the coolest system, and one day I will sit down and I will explain to you guys why I'm obsessed with the immune system. But for now, read this article if you're at all interested in learning more about how the system that is actually used to like fight diseases and get rid of things actually helps a tattoo stay in your body. The next article is Women Are Reinventing the Long Despised Speculum. This was published in The Atlantic on March 8th, 2018, and it was written by Daniela Beal. This article is basically speculum's a history. If you have been to the gynecologist, you are probably familiar with the speculum. If you've never been to the gynecologist or you've never heard of a speculum before, basically it is a device that is used to analyze a woman's interiors. And the history of speculums is about as uncomfortable as the device itself. This device has its roots in slavery and the treatment of slave women. It's also increased in use in response to changing social dictates around women in general, in ways that are also kind of paradoxical. And I think it's important to recognize, even like parts of medicine that we might take for granted today, that a lot of these parts of medicine have complicated histories and, you know, racism and slavery and how people have treated women. And women's health is especially fraught for obvious reasons. And I think it was interesting in this article to see the different contradictions, like some of the ones that I noted, but they're also describing in this article how people are approaching designing a better speculum, and that's also really interesting to read about as well. So I would recommend this article if you like reading these kinds of like cultural histories and you want to see how that ties in with medicine and especially medical devices. The next article is titled, "Here's How the Scientists Running for Office Are Doing." It was also published in The Atlantic. It was published on February 28th, 2018, and it was written by Ed Young. In the wake of the 2016 election and the March for Science, there was a huge kind of surge of energy in the scientist community, encouraging scientists to run for political office. And, you know, now that it's been for a little bit of a while, Ed Young basically wanted to go and see how they are doing. There's a lot of reasons why I thought this article was really good. First of all, I just think it's necessary. I think having any kind of update is really, really important. It's really easy to get caught up in the excitement and the rush of like that initial surge of like, okay, we're gonna do it, we're gonna like run for office. But it's also easy to like trail off and just be like, oh yeah, remember when all those scientists said they're gonna run for office, huh? And I like this article because it doesn't just like track and say like, oh, now we have this many scientists, and it doesn't paint a rosy picture either of scientists as political candidates. It really gets into the complications for scientists who are running for office in terms of like what it takes to have that shift in mentality in terms of asking for money or like the time and just the energy. Some of those things are universal. They're not just specific to scientists, but some of those things are more unique to scientists, and I thought it was really, really great to see that laid out in this article. It specifically goes into detail on this political action committee called 314 Action. So I appreciate this article for also kind of raising like this more specific knowledge of organizations that are dedicated to helping scientists run for office. I think this article is really interesting for fans of like the Pod Save America breakdown of campaigning. Something I love about that podcast is how they get into kind of the nuts and bolts of like building and maintaining a campaign. So I think if you like that and you now want to see it from the angle of like these scientist politicians or these scientists turned politicians, I think would be really interesting. The last article I'm going to talk about is Devastating But Essential: The Many Uses of Venom. This article was published by Undark on February 23rd, 2018, and was written by Elizabeth Svoboda. I hope I said the last name correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. So this article is about venom. It's about how it's used in nature by different organisms and different animals, and its potential for health benefits. It's also a review of the book Venom: The Secrets of Nature's Deadliest Weapon by Ronald Jenner and Ivan Undheim. I'm one of those people who's like scared of snakes in that really masochistic way where I'm always reading things about them. And so this article starts with an anecdote that I was just like, oh my God. I honestly didn't didn't realize that this article was a book review at first because I was so immersed in the details of what it was describing in terms of venom and, yeah, like I said, all of its uses in nature. I think, like, if you're also someone who is fascinated by these, like, mildly creepy parts of nature and how they shape, you know, evolution, but also have potential uses, I think this is an interesting article to read, and especially if you're interested in the book and you hadn't heard of it before, I would check out the book review and see if it sounds like something you want to read. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about these articles, and I hope that you guys get a chance to read them and enjoy them. And yeah, bye.